Hey you guys, it's Britt. Tonight we're here to talk about what Trisha Paytas had to say recently about Colleen Ballinger, and I just wanted to go ahead and allow her to speak. I think that she is, as many other people that I've talked about, she is an important voice in this conversation. My own criticisms about her aside, she's still an important voice, and I think she definitely deserves to be heard because at the end of the day, she is still a of Colleen Ballinger. Even if she's done some things and said some things that I disagree with, she was still negatively impacted and her voice matters. So if you're interested, please keep watching. All right, you guys, so a couple of TikToks were floating around sharing what Trisha was saying about Colleen. And before we get into this part of the video, I want to take a moment and acknowledge Ethan Klein. I'm sure most of y'all follow Ethan or you at least know who he is. Ethan Klein is somebody who I've listened to off and on for a while, and there's been some clips recently that I've seen. He recently lost his dog, and some of the clips that I've seen where he's talking about his dog and kind of sharing his emotions as a pet parent who is grieving the loss of their dog just touched me in such a way that I'm going to get sad if I think about it right now. But some of the things that I've seen, I think he should be appreciated because I talk so often about toxic creators and bad influencers and people, who don't deserve a platform. Ethan Klein is one of the good ones. I think he has a heart of gold, and I think that he deserves every piece of success that he has, past, present, and future. And I think that he is really one of the good ones. So I'll link his podcast YouTube channel down below in case you guys are curious. But I just wanted to take a minute because number one, he covers topics that I'm interested in and or that I also cover because I have a commentary channel. But some of the more personal things that he's been sharing as somebody who recently lost their dog have just touched me in a way that I can't really explain without getting sad. So I won't go into that right now, but Ethan's a good one. So let's get into these clips about Trisha. All right, so the first section of this podcast I want to react to is where she talks about JoJo. There are also some other things that she talks about, like she issues an apology to Adam McIntyre. That's not my apology to accept, so I'm not going to react to it. She also talks about Bunny XO because there was some drama with Bunny and Jeffree Star being on Bunny's podcast. That's not what I'm here to cover today, but either way, let's get into where she talks about JoJo.
Situation that like the Colleen stuff is just like not drama, and like keep hearing it being called drama and people capitalizing off of it, and it just like bothers me so much to my core, like so much to my core. I feel like when it involves like children and stuff, how people just like it just gets counted as like, oh, cancel culture is awful and cancel culture got her. It's like when I heard JoJo Siwa on How You Does podcast, like seeing like, a lot of people were got hurt by this cancellation. I'm like, this isn't a cancellation. Like, it's just not a cancellation, period. Like, she left the internet and, like, I guess canceled herself. But it's like, there's so much to this that, like, people just, there's no accountability. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's none whatsoever. Not even an inkling of, like, okay.
I'm so glad that Trisha is taking this stance and allowing her opinions to be known very clearly in this entire conversation, because how many times have I said, I wish someone with a bigger platform would really just tell it like it is. Like, let's stop trying to protect bad YouTubers and excusing their toxic behavior. So to see Trisha come full circle, and at one point she was one of those toxic creators, to now using her voice and using her platforms to stand up for people, not only stand up for herself, but also stand up for other people that were mistreated by these public figures. I love this for internet culture. I love to see change and growth out of people. So to see her, sitting here and really just not sugarcoating, and simultaneously, she's not sugarcoating, but she's also not being a jerk or extremely cruel about it. She's able to form her thoughts and opinions and not lace them with a bunch of, immature insults or bunch of name calling. So I love this. I'm here for it. And as I said, she is a really important voice in this conversation. So I'm just here for what she has to say and the way that she has been handling all of this.
I hurt people, I'm sorry, or oh man, this sucks, like I shouldn't, like even her line of like, where she's just like, I'm not a groomer, just a loser. Like she really could have just been like, hey guys, like I was thinking in this mentality, like I'm so sorry, like I hurt people. Like why can't you just give that like little bit of apology and closure to these people who are like still severely hurt by it? You know what I mean? And it's like to have your friend who is your friend since she was 12 years old and you were 27, like defend you like this, and someone who's really well liked by children, by the way, is like, it's so frustrating. It's so unbelievably frustrating and like hurtful. And
it really is so much more than drama. And I've talked about that previously, but this is not, when I think of internet drama, I think of something that's lighthearted, or maybe two people get into it with each other because they're being shady towards one another. Like, this is not the drama that we used to have happening on YouTube 4 or 5 years ago. And I realize, things change, people change, environments change, all of that. But it's become this really dark kind of just sad topic to cover. There's no kind of lighthearted way to cover some of these topics. Now, some of them, yes, like still can be covered and they're more light in nature, but with the Colleen stuff, with the Ruby Frankie situation, with James Charles, we're no longer just talking about lighthearted drama. These are really dark, heavy topics, and I think that it's kind of sad. Am I glad that people are being exposed for who they are if they're actually bad people? Yes, but it can also at the same time be tough to cover as a commentary channel.
Even consider myself like obviously like one of these child victims that were like involved, the people who were hurt, the girl on the stage when she was 16, Adam McIntyre, the people in the group chat doing the tampon challenge. Like it's just crazy to me how this gets like swept under and almost like joked about. I don't know, it's just like weird. I don't know.
Here's the thing, I think JoJo in general tries to be like super positive, right? And I think if that's the stance she was gonna have, should have just like avoided talking about it. And I get, like, I'm trying to get like her perspective on it, right? And I imagine like you said, since she was 12 years old, growing up, like she's collabed with them, gone on vacations with them. She's been like a part of that whole circle. So I know that there has to be like a sense of loyalty to them. And then there's an element of like, that can't be true because I know them and I know that they would never, I know that she would never do that.
Here's my thing, and I've talked about this recently as well, but how far does your loyalty go? And I understand a lot of people are saying that JoJo, well, she was by Colleen because their friendship started when she was so young, she was naive, impressionable, but at the same time, JoJo's also 20, and keep in mind, Adam McIntyre is also 20 years old. So the difference in self-awareness, the difference in being able to process a situation is actually wrong. I don't give JoJo this like automatic kind of, you can go on and not really be called out for this. I think that JoJo should be called out and it should be talked about very loudly, and I hope that at some point she kind of reevaluates her stance in this situation and comes out, and I hope that she apologizes. And I know that you can't force an apology, but I really hope that she apologizes to the victims of Colleen. Because here's the thing, do you think that Colleen Ballinger would be going to bat this hard for JoJo if JoJo was being exposed for being inappropriate with underage fans? And at the same time, there's also this other layer of complexity because JoJo was allegedly in these group chats, and there's been screenshots of that being sent around. Not only was she groomed by Colleen, but she was also involved in some of this toxic behavior that was going on behind the scenes. So I don't know. It's just a toxic dumpster fire, and it's not going to get any better. And it's definitely not going to get any better if we have people like JoJo Siwa, whose fan base is literal children. JoJo Siwa has a freaking Cabbage Patch doll designed after her. Like, her fan base is actually children. I would say over 90% of her fan base is children. And we have somebody like that setting the example as to what kind of behavior you should be standing up for, which is alarming and scary.
But there's just so much evidence that you have to like kind of set aside the person you think you know versus like who they are and what they've done to other people. You know, there's that element to it.
Which it kind of almost is like, because they were friends at such a young age, it's like, it's almost as if it's like, yeah, you're so attached. You're so like, the only reason I use the word manipulation is because like, I feel like I have kind of a unique like perspective on the situation because I was also friends with Colleen when this happened. And I did also feel some sort of like, oh, I know Colleen, or like, she never brought this up before. I never seen her do this. Like, but the manipulation I felt by her, and I truly do, and I don't use that term loosely at all. Like, I really don't use manipulation like loosely, but I feel like I know I was manipulated. And like, I think that's why I have so much anger still. And I feel like I see this almost with JoJo, like it's manipulation. She's saying, oh, these are all lies. Well, she wasn't there in the situation. She's not involved, unless she was in these group chats or whatever like that, which she didn't say anything to. But the only person who could be telling you that these are lies are someone that's involved. So Colleen and these people are involved. And how do I know this? Because she's telling me this. I'm like, oh, like, did you, like, and I was so nice about it. When I first heard the stuff about the pictures being sent to Johnny and, you know, allegedly to Adam, I brought it up to her.
But she was. So maybe Trisha wasn't aware of that during the filming of this podcast, but there have been screenshots that I've seen myself of JoJo being involved in these group chats.
Like, your fans, like, they were sending me pictures, and I was like, guys, and sometimes I would do like one word response, like, okay, like, such crazy lies when she knew that this was like out there, and then later confirming it to me. So it's no longer a lie. Like, she confirmed this happened. So, but I was also manipulated. I was thinking like, okay. So I was like, at the time I'm like, well, we should at least talk about it because she kept pushing to come back with the podcast. And when I started like really like listening to this stuff, I was kind of like, I don't know. And like,
I've always said somebody who has the ability to lie straight to your face without even blinking or pausing very long, and they just can do that with a straight face. Those are very dangerous people to be around. In my personal life, if I know somebody is a pathological liar, they will be at an arm's distance from me. And my personal, details of my personal life and things that I don't want, maybe outside of my inner circle. Man, I've seen people that can lie very easily, and those are people that I would never, ever, ever want anywhere near me.
Being a skeptic, being her friend, being an influencer, yes, lies are told about you. So you're just like, okay, let me like hear more. But she was constantly pushing to like do the show. We're going to come back and show them. Like, we don't, and then she was like, yeah, we'll talk about it on the show, was the first thing she said. Then she came back a couple weeks later, like, let's not even talk about it. We'll just come back so we can show them, like, look, we're friends, like this kind of stuff. And I was like, that's when it started feeling icky to me, because I'm like, why is she pushing coming back so much when she herself hasn't said anything, wanting me to be the first to put out there to test the waters to see how it goes. It was so manipulative. And I would just like, really hate her so much for it, because I was someone who's like, okay, maybe, and I was someone who's like, well, I don't know, like, let me see what, because you just don't know, right, the truth, but you just have to give, in this situation, the space and the time for the truth to come out, and the truth has already come out about
Talking about testing the waters, that reminds me of how Corey DeSoto came out and returned his Instagram and put out that thirst trap photo, and, those few creators who are still supporting him, which is a problem in itself, which I've discussed, were in the comments leaving comments of support. And Adam McIntyre addressed that, in his opinion, but definitely in my opinion, that Corey came out with that in order to test the waters. And I am almost positive that Colleen was behind that decision. If she wasn't fully behind it, then she absolutely influenced that decision for him to come back with that photo. and what day it was posted, what the caption ended up edited to be, everything.
Was a teenager. She was having inappropriate conversations with minors about tampons, her sex life, divorce, all this stuff like that. Like those are facts. Those are facts. She admits it. She calls it being desperate, but no, you had this inappropriate relationship. So for JoJo to be like, oh, all these lies, like just discounting facts, you know what I mean? Like, yes, in a sea of things, there's probably lies, but when there's actual facts and no one's taking accountability or responsibility for it, it's manipulation. She's hearing it from somebody saying that these are lies, because there's no way, I don't believe JoJo is so egotistical to think that she knows what lies are when she wasn't in that situation, you know? So to be like, oh, all these lies and stuff like that, just crediting.
And here's, again, I keep going back to that damn video in 2020 that Adam McIntyre put out, because it was a well-delivered video. It was not just a bunch of hearsay and something that could not be confirmed or was not confirmed by him in that video. And people attacked him for that video. And he had to deal with years of people being angry, cussing him out, coming after his family, coming after him, harassing him, bullying him for literally 3 years, just about. Almost 3 years to the day, actually. He had to deal with that relentlessly. And how vital and how much things would have been different. Imagine if instead of people thinking that Adam was some kind of clout chaser and, you know, making a big deal out of nothing, instead of looking at it that way, if people would have acknowledged what some of us acknowledged in 2020, why is a full-grown adult having any type of friendship with a child fan? That is weird. That is a red flag. If larger creators would have spoken up for Adam back in 2020, how would things have been different? I mean, obviously we'll never know, but I do wonder that sometimes. People always want to be on the bandwagon. They want to speak up when it's convenient or when it's popular or when everybody else is saying the same thing. Then you have people coming out and being like, oh, well, this is wild and crazy. But it's like, yeah, but it's inappropriate now, and we have even more information to prove that, but it was inappropriate in 2020. And y'all were either crickets or dragging Adam left, up, right down, front and center or whatever. I get very flustered talking about that because it is frustrating. Okay, there's 2 more videos I want to talk about. This one where Trisha kind of elaborates on her thoughts about the power dynamic in between Colleen and JoJo. And then we'll move on to the final clip that I'm going to share with you guys. And then we will finish up this video.
One reason I feel like everyone saw it is like, this is why you shouldn't be friends with a minor. Because are any of Colleen's adult friends standing up for her or defending her? No, because you can love someone. Like, I'm sure her husband loves her. I'm sure her parents love her. And you can love someone and just know that they're in the wrong.
And back in 2020, Colleen Ballinger was publicly friends with JoJo and had been exposed by Adam McIntyre. These 2 things were true back in 2020. But nevertheless, let's keep going.
And let them deal with the consequences. Like JoJo, just like, you need to know this is the wrong. Be there for them privately, because you don't want them to like hurt themselves or anything like that. But to defend and call other people who were hurt by this like victims, I'm like, that's so gross on so many levels. And I don't know 100% if I blame JoJo, because she's obviously hearing it from someone, and it's obviously a manipulation. And you are friends with someone since you're a child. She kept reiterating, since I was 12, since this, we became friends. Yeah. It's like, that's the problem. That's the problem. You're the only ones to.
And my other question that I thought of after I made my initial reaction of her being on Howie's podcast was, what about her mother? This really goes to show how far some parents will go to make sure that their kids become popular people on social media. Because for her mother to allow JoJo to go over to Colleen's house and build this friendship and be there with no parents, doing collabs and hanging out with Colleen and just putting that much trust in this internet personality, and then JoJo's mom seeing the content that they were filming, extremely inappropriate, the things that she had filmed with, quote, Miranda, And that was all public on YouTube. And her mother continued to allow her to go over to Colleen's house and make more content and have more awkward exchanges that were posted publicly. And the only reason I can think she was justifying that is because she wanted her daughter to be one of the biggest creators on YouTube. And she knew that by allowing her to collab with Colleen as either Colleen as Miranda or out of character, she knew that that would be, they would get money and clicks and ads and partnerships and brand deals. And JoJo would continue to flourish to the point where she was able to do her merch, she had stuff in Target. It's all just, it always comes down to money. If it's not attention, it's money. And it's so sad when parents want to just put their kids out there. It's all good because we want our child to be one of the biggest creators and go viral or get really big in the algorithm. It's just very ick to me.
Sticking up for this because you matter when you're a child and you're believing all this stuff, which we saw in the swoop thing when Joshua talked about the JoJo situation, which is, to me, was just, ugh. I had like a sickness in my stomach. The fact that there was even this battle, which Josh allegedly said that he didn't want a part of like getting JoJo on people's side during that, or like, oh, they're not talking to her because she's on thing. It's like, everyone's a grown adult in the situation except for JoJo. So like even putting her in that situation, it's like when the worst kind of parents will make the kids in the middle of the divorce, which is not even their child. So it's even weirder that they were doing that. But it just like the whole thing is like so sick and twisted. So then she feels like, yeah, she has loyalty to Colleen because Colleen was there for her during this difficult time or whatever. It's just, the whole thing was a lot. It was just a lot. And hearing the situation about JoJo and how they were all friends with her, I don't know. It's just, no matter how mature a child is, like hanging out with someone like that, being that close to someone as a child when you're not their parent or not related to them, and not a mentor, by the way. I should also say this. Some people were asking about like the big brother, big sister program. Completely different. I think having like, helping a child who doesn't have like a mentor at home, like, of course, those systems could be skewed, but like you're designated, you're being watched, all this stuff like that. Like, of course, that's like a different thing. And not everyone had the intentions, but I think in general, being friends or too friendly, even in that situation with a child or sharing this information about a divorce, information about any of this stuff, is like, they're a child. Like, it's the fact that JoJo was even like witness to all of that and like involved with all of that to that extent is like disturbing. And now we're like seeing it as an adult, how she's like defending this and how she thinks it's like totally okay. Like, because Howie asked in the interview, this Howie Mandel interview she did, he asked like, oh, my granddaughter who's 9 would be a fan, and if she could talk to you, she would. And JoJo's like, yeah, but the difference is me and Colleen were friends. We became close friends. And I'm like, that right there is the problem. Like, you wouldn't be friends with Howie's 9-year-old granddaughter, but you're thinking it's okay because you guys are friends. How did you become friends? How did you have that closeness? Why? It's this, you idolize this person. Like, you obviously have these rose-colored glasses on. Like, there's so much wrong, and it makes me sad. It makes me sad for JoJo. I'm not saying she doesn't want to be a victim.
I'm going to move on to the next video because it becomes a little repetitive, and I've already talked about Josh, JoJo on the podcast, so let's move on to this final part. It's just absolutely wild because the Ballingers, all of them knew that they could use JoJo as a way to produce content and get a lot of clicks and views. Because children are constantly on YouTube, children are watching JoJo, and if JoJo is collabing constantly with members of the Ballinger family, then that's sending traffic to their channels. And I just think the whole thing is gross, and the way that she was used as a prop. Not only was JoJo used as a prop, the Ballingers have used their own kids as props, and then to literally bring in this other child because she was popular on social media as a way to cross promote. It's gross.
There and stuff like that. Like, I think there is a chance, like, people didn't, like, for me, I genuinely did not know. I remember the first time or the last time we went there, like 2020 in December or whatever, after I had my baby, like, she's like, oh yeah, Reddit hates me, I'm always getting canceled. And I was genuinely so confused, like most would say, and I'd ask her, I'd be like, why do people hate you? To me, she was like unproblematic, wholesome. Like, I didn't know anything about Miranda, I didn't know about anything. I just thought, oh, she's just this like goody girl. Like, I just thought she was like a goody two shoes girl, just like sweet, whatever. Like, that's always my image of her. Maybe because I didn't know anything about her, but I was like, oh, she was.
You didn't know anything about Miranda. Trisha, I call BS on that part. Everybody knows that Colleen Ballinger has this character, Miranda. There is no way that Trisha Paytas was friends with Colleen Ballinger for an extended period of time and didn't know about Miranda. Maybe she's trying to say, I didn't know how graphic and awkward Miranda's content was, but if that's what she meant, she should have elaborated. Because to me, it sounds like she's trying to claim that she didn't know anything about Miranda, and I call complete BS on that.
Always been in a long-term relationship. She's with that person. And then she would tell me, like, she always just tell me like one incident with, Adam about the underwear. Oh, like, like it became this thing that wasn't, and I still had no idea what it was. And then when I watched that whole situation, I'm like, okay, that's weird too. And she was like downplaying it. Like, again, saying like, oh, he wanted underwear. We like sent it to him or whatever like that. But
wait, so you're a goody two-shoes if you've been in a long-term relationship? I know a lot of people who have been in long-term relationships and they are certainly not goody two-shoes or have any better character than the person next to them simply because they've been in a long-term relationship or not had a lot of partners in life. That's kind of a weird comparison to make, but let's keep going.
It was like, no, you offered it. Anyway, it became a weird thing, but I had no idea she was problematic. And like, I feel like for me, I'm like overly telling people like, oh my God, I'm like, there's this and this in my past or whatever. But she didn't tell me like any of that stuff, which I thought was like weird. She was concerned like going to her podcast people because they didn't want to lose ads because of me. But she's acting like I was the problematic one. And I was just like, girl, you knew all this. But she always said like, we're going to get canceled. I'm going to get canceled. Like it's going to, right? Like, I mean, it always was very much that. And I was like so confused. Like from even the first episode, are we canceled? Are we canceled?
Right,
like,
we canceled
like,
yet or something.
And I was like, girl, what did you do in your past that you're so, because I'm a pretty cancelable person. And I was just like, we're fine. We're not doing anything wrong. Meanwhile, all this shit, I was like, what? Still to this day.
Also, she knew, I mean, somewhere in the back of her head, she knew that those photos exist, those text messages about you.
Colleen is one of those people, maybe she manifested her own cancellation because she talked about it all of the time. I remember seeing vlogs that would either be discussed on her Reddit or I would see them once in a while on YouTube. I realized that things on social media can get frustrating, it can get a little stressful, and I understand that, and I only understand it to a degree because obviously my audience and my reach is so much smaller than Colleen's is. So I imagine that she just gets a lot of stuff, even, way before all of this was exposed. But I have never, that I can think of off the top of my head, heard somebody constantly talk about being canceled. Like constantly with the sad fishing in her YouTube videos. The crying, the saying that people are trying to cancel her, the weird things that she would come up with to say, oh, somebody is trying to cancel me over this, and then she would cry about it. And it came off as, again, in my opinion, very manipulative because she knew that her audience would automatically try to go seek out, okay, who's talking about Colleen? What are they saying? And that's when I would get an influx of nasty comments on my Colleen videos because, she would sit there on a vlog and cry. And what do you think your young fans are going to do? They're automatically going to go see who's been covering Colleen as of recently. And up until this summer, there weren't a lot of YouTubers that were calling her out. There were very, very few. And they would leave, nasty comments. And I could tell when I would get a few comments, within a couple of hours, then I would be able to tell like, okay, Colleen was probably crying on social media today, claiming that somebody's trying to cancel her, when all that I would say is she's being inappropriate. I don't like this content. She's using her kids. She's, child exploiter. Those are my opinions based on her content. So nobody ever, to my knowledge that I came across, nobody was trying to cancel her. They were attempting to call out her extremely problematic and toxic behavior. But I think a lot of people also were kind of quiet because she has an infamous toxic following.
So I think it's just like, I don't know, I still don't understand how you go and work with somebody when you know that is there.
Because the mukbang in December 2020, she was very much like, oh my God, I feel like you're going to cancel me. Like, oh my God, if it ends bad, it's going to end so bad. And like all this stuff like that. And I remember saying in the mukbang, like, girl, like I'm not in that era of my life. Like I'm not trying to like ruin you or cancel you. And it's like weird. I was like, oh wait, she's like weirdly manifested, but it's not manifesting. She like knew all this shit and ended up. And I'm telling you, it's like the biggest struggle. And I really try, like, even the swoop thing, I like, full disclosure, I didn't watch like the entirety of it, but I was just like, because it's the most bizarre thing. It's the most bizarre, because she would say that stuff like, oh, like, you know, it's going to end so badly and stuff. And I'm just like, what a weird thing to say. And like, it ended the worst of anything that could possibly end. But because of your...
There was also another clip that I will include at the end of this video. It says Trisha spills the tea on what Colleen was allegedly telling her behind the scenes when stuff was starting to come out about her. And she also talks about the, basically the negative impact of Colleen and everything that she's done. So I'll include a couple of snippets of that at the end of the video. But I wanted to share this with you guys. You know, Trisha has... At one point in time, I was not a Trisha Paytas fan. I could have taken her or left her. I just didn't really care too much about what she had going on. I felt like she was just another toxic influencer. But I have to say, during this Colleen Ballinger situation over the last couple of months, I have seen her have some really solid takes, and I've seen her be a voice of reason. And as I've said, you know, everyone's voice is important, but when somebody has a large platform and they are using their platform to actually be a decent person, that deserves to be recognized. And simultaneously, as I said, she is a victim of Colleen Ballinger, just as Adam McIntyre is, and all of the other people that, you know, I've talked about for months now.
That's it.
Yeah, it makes me so curious about the conversations behind the scenes, you know, for JoJo, like you said, for JoJo to be saying that those are lies. So obviously someone told her. So
and what? I know how it goes. I know how it goes because I was in it for just a short amount of time, and it was so stressful. I was so sick in June. I didn't get my period for like 2 months, so my hormones were all thrown off. Like it was so beyond stressful because, like, yes, you want to believe this person that you're friends with and, like, you know, you think is a good person. And she comes off so sweet. Like, I remember when I first heard about this, supposedly, like, made fun of my weight, sent pictures and stuff like that, like, weeks before it came out. I remember just feeling some type of way. And I didn't respond right away. And she kept sending me voice memos like, oh my gosh, did I lose you? Like, are you there? And it just, like, took a full day for me to, like, and again, I'm just, like, someone who's, like, I didn't want her to, like, do anything bad to herself, right? Like she's like, you know, I don't have anyone and everyone probably hates me. All my friends probably hate me. They believe this stuff, you know. So she's like, everyone, you know, is like not talking to me, whatever. So I thought, so she's like telling me it's not true. She's telling me all this stuff. And then on top of that, saying that stuff. And I remember that specific one where it was like, oh no, did I lose you? And I was just like, yeah. So it's like, I know this situation and I wanted to like cut ties and it was so hard. And we always knew the podcast wasn't coming back. Like it always was that, but she wanted it to come back so bad and wanted all this stuff to happen and just, you know, blow over. And I just, so I know that situation and I know it's like really tough, especially when you're so young and you're connected to the whole family. She's connected to the whole family. I'm not connected to, you know, any of them, you know, at all. And it was constant. It was all throughout the day, every day, you know, just getting voice memos, like so many throughout the night. And like, and in one way you do feel for her, right? Like I'm saying in like JoJo's situation, right? You're like hearing this anxiety. I could hear it. Voice memos all hours of the night saying, you know, she can't eat, doesn't see her kids. And like, and probably a lot of that is true. I'm not saying that's a manipulation tactic, but you're just like, well, I don't want this person to like hurt themselves, you know what I mean? Or, you know, with the kids and all this stuff like that. So as someone as an insider, that's what I'm saying, as someone isn't like someone who's like close to you, like JoJo or any of her family, like be there for that person, but you can't make excuses. And all I could think of is like, how do I go about this? How do I say this? Which is why I always say stuff like her friends, I don't think necessarily people always are like, well, if you don't say anything, you're part of the problem. But it's like, if you don't know the full situation, like you shouldn't talk about it anyways. And I just didn't know the full situation because she clearly wasn't telling me. I don't know everything that happened in those group chats. It's like sometimes it's like it's not your place to say something about someone. So I don't like that whole attitude as if you say something, you're complicit. It's like, that's not true. You don't know how to go about it. Do you want to make it a drama? If it happened to like the closest person to me, like my sister or something like that, you know, it's like, you just don't say anything because it's like, what do you say, right? You want to be there for the person. You don't want to like just come out and publicly bash them. I think people show over time their signs if they support someone or not. You know what I mean? So I don't know. People just demand so much from people. And it's like, sometimes that's just like, not for me. It's like, I don't know. I was working closely with her. So I'm like, what is the move in this situation? And I feel so strongly about it. That was the other thing. And that was a battle I had so much with Moses. Like, this is something, because even stuff he didn't know, because right, like grooming and stuff like that, like if you weren't groomed, if you didn't go through this stuff, like it is hard to kind of see what these kids are going through and stuff. So I would have this battle with like Moses, because I'm just like, how do I say something that I feel so strongly about? For me personally, it's like, acknowledge it, especially because like you were so involved. You know what I mean? Like, acknowledge it. Woody Allen can hide because he's just old and no one really cares anymore. He's not in the height of his career and stuff like that. But like, you hurt so many people. The Colleen one, there's so many people who were hurt by you. Like, acknowledge it, especially just the children at the end of the day. Like me, who cares? I'm an adult. You know, Josh at the end of the day is an adult, and it does suck. I'm not taking that away, but like these children who are so clearly affected by it. I see Becky tweeting all the time. I see Adam, you know, talking about all the time. Like, there's some real shit you should own up for, you know?
Yeah.
And it gets brought up, you know, with the soup thing. It's like it gets brought up, and it almost is like triggering. And of course, triggers are your own thing to figure out. You know, you need to figure out how to handle them. It's not anyone's fault, but it's like, I get so upset. The JoJo made me just so upset. And when they say stuff like this, she's not the first influencer to say it. Where it's like, oh, people are capitalizing off it. It's like, no, people are talking about it. People who have a platform who's like, this so happens to be their job, are talking about it, because it's like something that's so real and needs to be talked about. Like, I could talk about anything and make money. You know what I mean? But it's like, you can't just write off as like, oh, people are capitalizing off. It's like, no, people are like raising awareness about it and keep talking about it because people think it's completely normal, apparently. And like I said, she's not the first influencer to say this, to be like, oh, I think it's gross. So she made some mistakes. So it's like this. It's like, that's so, what is wrong? That's what's wrong with the world. It's like that people do think this is so normal, including me. I saw things like Woody Allen's relationship and being like, that's what I want. I want to aspire. And if I was a child and saw people being friends with their favorite influencer, I mean, that's what I did. I would go to.
But it's important to hear her out. I hope that she is taking care of herself. I really wish that she would take her sweet, now toddler, off of social media. I really do. If this could teach anyone anything, I would hope that it might encourage some of these influencers to, you know, take your kids off social media. Like, social media, whether they are being given a device of their own or whether they're a part of your content, social media is just not a safe place for kids. And I had that conversation probably, you know, 2,542 times by now, so I won't bore you guys tonight with it. But I think as the months and days tick on, it's only proven more and more and more that kids don't belong on social media, whether they are part of your content and you think that that is a safe zone, or if you are thinking that they are old enough to have their own device and peruse social media on their own. It's just not a safe place for kids, and that is where I stand on it. So that's enough blabbering for today, but for now, if you like the video, please leave a like and a comment, and if you'd like to see more from me in the future, please subscribe. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.